Well, I get to talk about this chapter in the book. Pardon, does everybody have a book? Ken probably has some if you don't have one, but this is chapter 15 in the book, and it's called Unfinished Business. And I get to talk about this today because this is my story. So, I'm pretty nervous. I told Chris about 3 weeks ago, I said, I get to do unfinished business, and I'm so excited to do it because where I was at in 2018 when it happened, and I'm in such a different place now. And then last week I went back and reread, thinking maybe the Lord might give me something, or I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do tonight. I told him if he's going to have to do it. So I'm going to start out by just reading the whole thing, and then I will get into a little bit more. Yeah, I wrote this in 2018. I've known the Lord for 19 years, and many events have transpired during that time. I've dealt with many issues in my heart, and I have had some foot-stomping freedoms. I've shed a few tears, received revelations. I've been hanging from the rafters, and hard things to realize, even with baggage from unfinished business. I was abused by a stepmother at the age of 3. She used food to discipline me. I was a very picky eater, and I hated peas. If I didn't eat them within the timer that was set on the table, which was for 15 minutes, I was taken to a back bedroom made to lay across the bed face down and whipped with a belt. What I didn't finish, I was given at the next meal along with the timer until the plate was clean. If I vomited in the plate, which I did, I had to eat that as well. This was a daily process for 3 meals a day, which lasted until the day I was admitted into a hospital for both of my legs being fractured. That was the 3rd time my real mother had taken me to the hospital. From the hospital, DCS came out and put my brother and myself in foster care until the court proceedings were over and we were placed back into my mother's care. I was only 3, but I can still remember the bedspread, the tablecloth that was on the dining table, and there is much more, but you get the picture. There are many things that I had to work through once Jesus found me at the age of 30. My point is that the 3-year-old little girl had set up a permanent foundation within me. Self-preservation, a defense mechanism for survival, complete control, a hatred for anyone who loved her because she was unlovable, a deep sadness with insecurities. I stuffed everything inside. The only one she would allow in was the brother. I'm speaking of her in a 3rd person because that little girl took control of everything so that she could survive, not live, but survive. The 3-year-old had been hushed and told not to cry, so as an adult, I did not cry. I only had one emotion that I knew, and that was anger. 4 years into my walk with Christ, the Lord was just getting to the surface of my abuse issues. At this time, my brother, with whom I am extremely close to because of what we went through, lived with me. He and his wife were having some marital issues. He was my protector, my best friend, my father figure, my brother, and he was the only one whom I loved and would allow to love me. He was the only one I trusted and the only place I found security. We had a bond like no other. One evening, my brother complained of not feeling good. I thought he was making excuses for not going to work, and I got angry with him. Later that same evening, on June 1st, 2003, I found him on my couch with blue lips, blue fingertips, and not breathing. He had passed away of a heart attack. I cannot justly describe with words the anguish in my heart from this moment in time. Then came all the guilt. Why didn't I listen to my brother? Then the question, why did God take my only security? Now, in 2018, I have peeled many layers off over the years, dealing with unforgiveness, rebellion, bitterness, self-hatred. I could go on all day with a list of freedoms that I have received. In 2015, my husband had returned from rehab, completely delivered by the Lord after being an addict and an alcoholic for 26 years. Today, he is a different man. The last 3 years of him walking in freedom has been super hard for me. I have felt lost with no purpose. I no longer had to be codependent and fix him. God did that. I've always been the glue to the entire family, including extended family. These last 3 years, my world has been turned upside down. It's now actually right side up in God's eyes, like it's supposed to be. But I, however, am learning to adjust, and God is teaching me who Melinda actually is. More recently, in the past 6 months, I've had dreams of past experiences which should have been painful, but had no effect because I'm a stuffer. I stuffed everything all the time. He is teaching me to process emotions, to cry, to feel, and to be vulnerable, hard but necessary. So I'm being obedient with each occurrence as the Lord shows me. 6 months of a revelation of my heart. Now, fast forward till Sunday, the May 20th, 2018. I could feel the presence of the Lord so strong when I awoke that day. I thought I was to minister and dance, but I see now it was so much more. I didn't dance. It just didn't feel like it was time. And after church, I was really aggravated, easily irritated, and I just wasn't sure why. I kept crying that afternoon, something that I never do. I felt so much grief and could not process what was happening. I talked with my husband in detail of what was happening, and the Lord showed him some things regarding that 3-year-old little girl inside of me and how she was tied to the grief and guilt of my brother passing. Well, the flood of emotions was too much for me. And I said, okay, I see that needs to be dealt with, but not today. My husband lovingly said, it's been 15 years. Why not today? The longer you wait and put it off, the harder your heart gets. Just be obedient and let me make a phone call and you can be free tonight. Let me pause right here so that you can fully grasp that if I dealt with the little girl, then I had to deal with the grief of my brother's passing 15 years ago. And that was something that I just refused to let go of. Obedience is much more important to me at this point in my life. So here we go. I called everyone in the house into the living room. My mother lives with us. I have a 15-year-old son. We have a person we help with addiction who has a strong gifting in prayer, and my husband was present. When the elder of the church arrived, it was already 9 p.m., and I had been wailing most of the day. Needless to say, I was a complete mess. Honestly, I just wanted to run, but I've been running my whole life from the pain. I'm tired, and I just want to be free, no matter what the cost. As the elder starts asking questions and we are discussing things, the Lord has been showing me that lead up to this point in time, and I ask him, why did God take my brother? And he tells a story. A lady whose husband, who would not go to church with her, lost their 3-year-old daughter in a car wreck. Her husband got real angry with God, and one Sunday she invited her minister, Charles Green, to eat dinner after church. Sitting at the table, the husband asked Charles, "Why did God take my little girl?" Charles said, "I really don't know the answer to that." Later, they walked out on the farm where he had to feed his sheep, which was on the other side of the creek. Knowing sheep are skittish crossing water, he picked up the little lamb and crossed over the creek and sat her down, and the mother ran through the water to be with her baby. When she did, the other sheep ran over too. Charles, having a revelation from God, said, "That question you asked me at the dinner table, the Lord has given me an answer for you. Sometimes you have to carry the baby lamb over first to bring the others over." That man saw it too and fell down on his knees, repented, and was saved. At this point, I realized when my brother died, my dad came to the Lord. My brother was the baby lamb. My husband was then led by the Holy Spirit to look at my mother and ask this question: "Do you feel guilty?" My mother broke at this point, a hard break from being heartbroken over the abuse, and she carried that guilt for over 50 years. At this point, it seemed the floodgates of heaven opened up for me. I confessed, repented, screamed, wailed, and asked God to take it. And I really did scream, y'all, like scream. I said, "Lord, you know my heart, and I cannot let this go. But in obedience, I'm asking for you to take what I cannot give." I also repented for holding my brother as an idol. As long as I was holding on, it was putting my brother before God, and that is an idol. Nothing can be before God. Over the next hour, there was a lot of emotion, more tears than I have ever had, some deep-rooted pain, extreme grief, and lots of confession. We gathered around and prayed, and the elder commanded that little girl to leave, and I physically felt her leave my body. I had no idea until that moment that she was actually a demon controlling all my emotions so that she could survive. But Jesus came so that I, Melinda, could live, and that is what happened that night. New life in me. What a journey. I can't say that this was a rafter experience just yet, because it's a lot to process, even in writing this part of the journey. But I can tell you that I have freedom and peace that surpasses all understanding with the human mind. I even cried yesterday when my feelings got hurt. I cannot recall ever doing that in my 48 years of life. I could feel that, and it wasn't anger, it was raw emotion, and I felt that. Crazy as it may sound, that is exciting. After 45 years, starting with my abuse at the dinner table, I can now eat green peas and like them. Wow, what a redeemer. Y'all have to understand, you could cook green peas on the stove, and it would make me sick, just smelling them. And I absolutely would not eat them. My husband's so sweet, when he'd make a pot pie, he'd pick the peas out of the veg-all can, so... Are you a stuffer? And do you have unfinished business? See, I'd spent my whole life, because I didn't really know how to process emotions, so I didn't know what to do with them. The only thing I knew to do was to push them down, and to push them down, and to push them down, and just keep pushing them down, and until something would just happen one day, because I would be so aggravated or whatever the thing was, that I would just explode. So I had anger, and I had severe rage. We might call it the York voice or the mama voice, my kids call it, but I like this quote that's in here by Affliction. He teaches us many precious lessons, which without it we should never learn. By affliction, he shows us our emptiness and weakness and draws us to the throne of grace, purifies our affections and weans us from the world, makes us long for heaven. J.C. Ryle. You know, a lot of times, that was in 2018, now it's 2024. So I said 3 weeks ago, I can't wait to do this because I'm in such a different place in my walk now. So I cannot wait to just see, you know, what God does with it. And then last week when I read it, and all I could do was cry and cry and cry. And then every time I would try to pick it up or pray and ask the Lord, all I could do was cry. And so I just shut the book. I was like, okay, I'm just not going to touch that. And that's the way it's been for the last week. And I just keep telling the Lord, okay, well, however you want to do this, you're just going to have to do it because I have no idea what direction to go in. When I'll start off with, I still have trouble processing emotions, but I have learned different things. And so I've been saying for the last several years, you know, I just have such trouble with grief. I just have such trouble with grief, you know, and grief is a spirit too. So, but when the AFBC people came, the college kids came, and that little girl prayed with me, and she said, how can I pray for you? And I said, I really don't know. I said, but one thing I seem to just really struggle with is grief. And she just took my hand and just ran with the prayer. And while she was praying, she said, God heals the brokenhearted. And when she said that, I didn't hear another word she said. Because I realized at that moment, I'm not dealing with grief. It's not that I'm struggling or I just can't get past it. It's not that. It's my heart is broke. My heart is broken. So that was a rooftop experience because that was exciting to realize, oh, okay, so. And then, you know, when I read this, now I wrote this in 2018, and in 2019, my sister she'd been not doing well in life, on drugs, different things, hadn't worked, had lost her kids, didn't have her kids, and she had came to the house one day and she was just out of her mind, and I was like, girl, you got to get some help because you're just not right now. You're just thinking crazy things. You're saying crazy things. And a month later, I didn't know it at the time, but she had gotten a job. She had been clean for 2 weeks, and so she was on her way to work. She had to be there really early in the morning. And there was another guy who had left work, who got off really late, was driving home from work and fell asleep and hit her head on. And so God had done a lot of things in 72 hours while she was in the hospital, because the Lord said, the doctor said she had a 1% chance of making it. So me, because, you know, I'm full of faith, I'm like, woohoo, God comes after the one. So the 1%, that's good. That's good odds. And was just kind of hoping and praying that way. And she had all kinds of injuries. Her brain was swelled. She had no brain activity. She had been cut open. The transmission had come up in the car. And so she had a lot of internal injuries and had already had surgery once. And just a lot of different things. And Pastor Chet had come to the hospital, and we were just kind of all sitting in the waiting room. This was like a day after. And he said, have you ever heard that song by Mercy Me, What If? Was it Mercy Me? I don't remember who sang it now, but. And I was like, yeah, I heard it the other day. But I didn't want the what if. She had 2 of her kids were there at the hospital, and they were old enough that they had to make decisions to turn the life support off. So in the 72 hours that she was on the life support, God just kept showing me, all of us really, different things to let me know that he had her, because I was so worried about her heart and her soul. She didn't live a good life, well, she did, but she just made some bad choices, so so I was very thankful for that. So I wrote this in 2018, and then that happened in 2019, and when we turned the machine off, she passed away. And me and my husband and my other sister were in the room with her, and so since then, I keep saying, well, it's grief. It's just grief. I just don't know what to do with grief. But then after the people prayed, and, the Lord told me that it's not that. It's just a broken heart. So, but sometimes, whether it's a spirit of grief or like the little girl, I want to read something in Mark 9. I'm going to start in verse 14, but I really want to focus on verse 23. And when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and scribes disputing with them. Immediately, when they all saw him, all the people were greatly amazed, and running to him and greeted him. And he asked the scribes, what are you discussing with them? Then one of the crowd answered and said, Teacher, you brought my son who has a mute spirit. Then one of the crowd answered and said, Teacher, I brought you my son who has a mute spirit. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not. He answered him and said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long should I bear with you? Bring him to me. Then they brought him to him, and when he saw him, the spirit convulsed him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood. And often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion and help us. So here's a kid that's been tormented by the spirit since he was a little kid. The spirit has thrown him into the fire and into water to destroy him. Sometimes we can have stuff in us that we don't even know about, unfinished business, because it wants to destroy us. But verse 23 says, Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believe. But if you look back in verse 22, it says, and often he has thrown him both into the fire and to the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. So the man said first, if you can help me, I really need some help. He's been like this since he was a kid. He hurts himself all the time. If you can. And then Jesus says to him, if you can believe. See, I think a lot of times we don't want to think about things like having that. I mean, I had that little girl inside of me, and I mean, I don't think I was a really evil person, was I? Okay, he was the wrong person to ask. That was my husband. Yeah, he'll be in the doghouse now, you know. But that little girl controlled just about everything I did. And I didn't even know at all that she was there. And you're talking, I got saved in 1999. And in 2018, this little girl is still there. Now, I had dealt with self-hatred and self-preservation. I don't know how to say that word, but y'all know what I mean. I had dealt with a lot of different things from the time I got saved till 2018 when this happened. I mean, I thought I was pretty good. I just refused to let go of losing my brother. I just wasn't going to do it. If I did that, then that just meant that I was just going to break down and cry and just go in a corner somewhere, and that was just it. I was done because it was just too much pain. I just couldn't take it. But see, that was such a lie. That was a lie from the pits of Hades. Because that wasn't the case at all. That's the lie the enemy wanted me to believe. So that I would not deal with anything. So that I could stay, you know, with her in me, and she could just be in total control of my emotions. So I just wonder, you know, stuffers, if you're a stuffer, what are you stuffing it into? See, I was stuffing it into her. Anything I felt, any kind of pain I had, any kind of heartache, any kind of anything, I stuffed into her because she could handle it. Without her, I can't handle it. But if you believe, all things are possible to him who believe. So I'd gotten saved in 1999. That happened in 2018. I had all that and went through all that stuff, and I didn't even realize that was controlling me. And so then when my sister passed, it was like, oh, what am I going to do now? I guess I have to cry. I tried to stuff it, but I couldn't. I try to act like I'm okay, but I'm not. I tried to still be Wonder Woman and everything to everybody, but I can't. That's not who I am anymore. God delivered me from that. You'll ask me all the time, how you doing? I'm great. 90% of the time, that's a lie. Because I'm not great. It's not that there's anything bad going on in my life. I just have a harder time with things, I guess, than I used to. Thank the Lord when Chris come home from rehab. And I didn't have to be codependent, and I didn't have to fix everybody or everything, because I was a complete mess. Because, when he wasn't where he was supposed to be, then I was here. God was here. God was at the top, and then it was me, because I had to keep everything intact so that everything would be okay. And when he went to rehab and got deliverance, he come back, and it was God at the top, and then it was Chris, and then it was Melinda, the way the family order is supposed to be. And I was a complete mess because I didn't know what to do with it, But that's what God does. He, no matter what we go through in life, he breaks it down. He shatters everything into a million pieces so that he can put it back together the way he intended it to be. See, he didn't intend for our relationship to be like that. He had to take a hammer and just smash it all. That's why we call our ministry broken vessels, because that's exactly what he did. Was he smashed it with a hammer. It broke in a million pieces, and he put it back together one piece at a time. But if you can just picture a vessel that's been broken and you just put the pieces back together, you got cracks in there. Sometimes the little clay piece is missing so it don't fit exactly right. Sometimes you got a piece you can't find at all, so there's just a hole in there, But as he pours in, God, Jesus Christ pours in to the broken vessel, that comes out through the holes, through the cracks, through the crevices, from the things that don't fit, from the things that are missing, and he uses that to heal. Isn't that a beautiful thing? That's a beautiful picture. So anytime you have something that you cannot let go of or you can't stop doing, like, I couldn't let go of my brother. He was an idol, but you just have to ask the Lord, why? Why can I not let go? Because that's what I had been asking 6 months before all of this had happened in 2018. I'd been asking questions. Why do I feel this way? Why? It wasn't why can't I let go of my brother? Because I already knew I had no plans of doing that. I didn't ask him that. Why do I feel this way? Why does there seem to be a block in between me and you? Why is this relationship like this? Questions like that. If you ask the Lord, he will always be faithful to show you the answers. It won't be immediately. Sometimes it'll be 6 months. But he will always be faithful to show you the answers. And I think as Christians, we all say the right things. We all know what to do, but it's kind of like, going to the gym. I know if I go to the gym and do the things that I won't have my jelly rolls. But, that I know that's what I need to do, but I don't always put it into practice. I don't go to the gym. I know not to eat the donut, but I don't always put it into practice. And I think that's an important question for us to ask ourselves too is there something that I know that I'm not putting into practice? And if you can, you have to believe. That belief has to be cultivated. It's not something that we can just be like, okay, I'm going to believe today. I'm going to believe, and I'm just going to believe. It's not like that. It's a walk. It's a process. Just like from 1999 to 2024, it's a walk. It's a journey. It's something that I've learned over the years. And as I learn, I'm able to take what I learned and share it with somebody else to help them. All of that is cultivating the ground. So you think of your heart. My heart was hard. You think of your heart as hard soil. It has to be cultivated. So you have to put a tiller on it or a shovel. And, you have to dig down in there and you have to break up that ground and make it ready so that you can be able to plant some seeds in there. And that is exactly the way the Lord has done me since He found me. I didn't find Him. He found me. I didn't ask for a lot of the things that I've been through in my life. But I wouldn't change none of them. Not one thing. Because all of that has cultivated and has brought me to this place that I am in my walk. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Hard things make us grow. Isn't that weird? Hard things make our hearts soft. Because you know why? It's just like when, when we had things out of order, they was like this, Melinda's way. And then when God put them in order, they was like this. So and for those on the tape, I have my right hand up and my left hand down. And then you flip it and put your left hand up and your right hand down because it's upside down. Everything God does is upside down to the world. Because the spiritual way, His way, Yahweh, is so much better if we will just be obedient to it. And, that night, the elder was talking to me and he was like, Melinda, you're going to have to let it go. And I was like, I can't. I cannot. I just cannot. And I think he told me some story about the keys or something. Because I was holding on to it. And he said, just open your hand. And so I just said, Lord, I can't. I cannot give you this. You know I can't. You know my heart. If you want it, you're going to have to take it. And I will allow you to take it, but I can't give it to you. And, that brought lots of freedom too. So sometimes when it's things you can't do, you just have to ask the Lord to send somebody in your life to speak to you or read something in the Word or watch some videos or watch some videos of some old dead preachers or sermons or, sometimes even some videos that aren't really like popular. You'd be surprised how much stuff that I've heard, a one-liner that has made a difference, that has made me think. You can't put God in a box. You never know what He's going to use. This Bible is the ultimate truth. That's the ultimate guide. But He will use a lot of things. And He will use an addict and a crazy wife to be able to be used to pour out into people that's hurting because we've been there. So if you're a stuffer, just ask the Lord and He'll show you. I think that's all I have.